On Network Africa, French President Emmanuel Macron condemns Niger attack on French aid workers. Mauritania's president appoints a new government. Plus, Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu says he lacks confidence in the Electoral Commission. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. From security in Somalia and Niger to South Africans marking the National Women's Day, we begin the program with news and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
South Africa celebrated National Women's Day on Sunday, marking 64 years since thousands of South African women marched to the Union buildings in the capital Pretoria on the 9th of August 1956 to protest against the extension of the pass laws to women.
It's those who already face economic insecurity.
In a speech marking the day, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that the government will set aside 40% of public procurement for women-owned businesses. He says the move will boost women financially and reduce gender inequality.
The Solidarity Fund has approved a 17 million rand project to expand shelter services and support the network of Tutuzela care centers. A portion of this funding will also go towards capacitating the Gender-Based Violence Command Center to ensure women are not made more vulnerable during the lockdown. We have put mechanisms in place, not just for social support, but also to help women-owned businesses. Of the 12.6 million people who have received social grants during the month of June, 10.5 or 83% were women who are aged 16 years and older.
To security, at least 8 soldiers were killed and 14 others wounded after a suicide bomber detonated an explosives-laden vehicle at the gates of a military base in Somalia's capital on Saturday. The militant group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attack. For more than 10 years, the militant group Al-Shabaab has been fighting to overthrow Somalia's internationally recognized government. In Niger, gunmen on motorcycles killed 6 French aid workers, a Nigerian guide, and a driver in a wildlife park on Sunday. The group was attacked in a giraffe reserve near Kure, a town about 65 kilometers from the capital. There was no immediate claim of responsibility.
Well, we're still on that story from Niger, where 8 people have been killed, including 6 French aid workers by gunmen on motorbikes at a wildlife park. French President Emmanuel Macron has denounced the attack, which he calls a cowardly attack, saying he will do everything to shed light on the incident. The French leader spoke to his Niger counterpart, Mahamadou Issoufou, adding that he still is determined to help counter the terrorist groups in the Sahel region. Well, now security expert David Otto joins us now to discuss more on the situation in Niger. Mr. Otto, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
In June, 10 aid workers were kidnapped in Niger, and now we're seeing more of that. Aid workers are becoming a target at a time when they're crucially needed in the region. First of all, why is this?
Of course, you know, these groups, whether be it Al-Qaeda or ISIS affiliated organizations or criminal organizations, they understand that aid workers are quite key within the region, and where they could use them for ransom demands, which they could use to sponsor some of their terrorist activities, they would do that. Where they could also use the kidnapping or the killing, as we've seen in the recent incident in Kore, they would do that to make a statement. Remember that, we don't yet know which group, is actually behind this particular attack. But irrespective, or whether it is the Islamic State of the Greater Sahel or the Al-Qaeda's faction called Jenim, what the message here is very clear, that there has been a huge a terror that has been created in the minds of aid organizations. But this is also impacting on the locals because, remember, 2 Nigerians, not to confuse this with Nigeria, 2 Nigerians died as a result of this incident.
Indeed. And apart from relying on security agents, how else can, the safety of the aid workers and even the locals be ensured?
I think one thing you've got to understand when it comes to asymmetric warfare, which is what is happening in Niger Republic, but also within the Sahel, looking towards the Lake Chad Basin, is that you need to have the support of the local population. This is a war that is fought by the people and won by the government. So where the people are not really in the back of this, at the back of this kind of crisis, you will always have information gaps. And you will have people that will continue to keep away information, see something and don't say anything. So I think the key here is for the local population and the government to ensure that there is a civil, military and law enforcement relationship that is built right through the grassroots.
Now, French President Emmanuel Macron says he is still determined to help counter the terrorist groups in the Sahel region. Since 2013, thousands of French troops have been deployed to the region. You also have French troops in Mali that are combating the Tuareg rebels. Even now in Beirut, France is also, involved in helping restore the city after that unfortunate explosion. France is everywhere, but in these areas, do you think they're paying enough attention to the insecurity in West Africa?
I think the people that should be paying more attention to insecurity in Africa is the African leaders. This shouldn't be a burden on France. And I can tell you that France doesn't have the same level of interest in the security of the region as the states do. So I think it has to be a local endeavor. And I think what the French should do, what the international partners should do, their role is very important. But I think what they should do is to empower these local countries, to be able to go on the ground themselves, rather than deploying thousands and thousands of French troops to this region. Because this also creates a second wave of radicalization. And this is why you can see that some of the lives of the aid workers are put at risk. Use the local knowledge and the local experts on the ground, and this will be sufficient.
All right, then, David Otto, security expert, thank you for your thoughts on Network Africa.
Thank you.
Now, away from security to politics, Mauritania's president has appointed a new government after some of his ministers were named in a report on the financial dealings of former President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz. Adama Bouka Soko, Secretary General of Mauritania's presidency, says the move would allow all those named in the report the time they need to prove their innocence. The new government remains substantially similar to the previous one, however, with 18 former ministers reappointed. The move also comes after President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani announced the government reshuffle and replaced his prime minister on Thursday. A 9-member parliamentary committee set up in January was tasked with shedding light on aspects of Aziz's 2008 to 2019 tenure. Matters investigated included the handling of oil revenues, sale of state-owned property in Nouakchott, and the liquidation of a state-owned food company. Well, over in East Africa, Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu says he lacks confidence in the Electoral Commission ahead of his presidential contest against incumbent John Magufuli in October's general elections. Mr. Lissu returned to the country from Belgium last month after surviving an assassination attempt in the capital Dodoma 3 years ago. He says electoral officials in the country serve at the pleasure of the incumbent, adding that his Chadema party will still participate in the elections, but will use all means to determine for accurate results to be released. Mr. Lisu also says no Tanzanian radio or television station had interviewed him since his return for fear of state repression. And in southern Africa, Zimbabwe's main opposition party, MDC Alliance, says about 30 of its members have fled their homes for fear of being abducted. The party tweeted that some members were contemplating moving their children to safer places, while many fear being tortured or detained. Opposition supporters and activists called for anti-government protests towards the end of last month to decry economic mismanagement and corruption. The government suppressed the protests by warning people to stay indoors and cracked down on solo protesters. Those who were arrested have been charged with various offences that activists say have been fabricated to fall within the Constitution. Well, it's World Mask Week, a global movement to inspire more people to wear face coverings to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Well, here in Africa, the coronavirus has infected over 1 million people. 733,988 have recovered and 23,290 people have unfortunately died. Experts say until we have vaccines or medicines to fight COVID-19, wearing a mask together with washing hands and social distancing is one of the best tools we have to protect ourselves and those around us. Well, there have been some misconceptions people have regarding the use of face masks, such as don't have to wear a face covering if you don't feel sick, or some believe wearing a face mask alone can protect people from COVID-19. Well, joining us to discuss the importance of face masks and clarify some of these misconceptions is Dr. Oluwaseun Akinyemi. He's a consultant physician at the University College Hospital. Thank you, Doctor, for speaking to us. Just how important is wearing a face mask in this fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Wearing a face mask is one of the comprehensive packages to prevent and to control this pandemic. Now, face mask wearing alone is not going to do it. Like I said, it's one of the comprehensive packages. And face mask wearing does two things, essentially. It protects the healthy person who is wearing the face mask. And in case of someone who is already infected, it acts as a means of source control to slow down or to prevent the spread of the infection from the infected person. So, as you rightly said in your introduction, wearing face masks is very essential in protecting ourselves and then the people that we love around us. So it protects the elderly person, and it also serves as to control the source of infection from the person that is already infected. So it is very important that we wear face mask. Wear the face mask correctly, not just hanging it below our chin or just holding it. It's important that we wear it, especially when we step outside our homes, when we step into public places, grocery store, especially in places where it's difficult to maintain social distancing or physical distancing. So it's one of the packages together with hand washing, physical distancing, and proper hygiene. The face mask is very essential if we are to control this pandemic.
Yeah, and for children, you know, it could be a bit difficult to get them to keep their face masks on, and we don't want them to suffocate also. What type of face mask do you think is appropriate for, you know, children, and how long should they keep them on for?
Now, generally, it is recommended that children less than 2 years, do not have to wear a face mask for some of the reasons you have talked about, the risk of suffocation and all. So, but children above 2 are expected or encouraged to wear face masks. And generally, it is recommended that the material that should be used for the face mask, the non-surgical face mask, should be cotton. If we use cotton material, it is easy to breathe through cotton. It should not be silk or any other material. So what is recommended is cotton, and it's not expected that children under 2 should wear face mask.
All right, Dr. Akinyemi Oluwaseun, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Always wear your face mask. We have more on Network Africa, including... Well, experts are warning of an oil spill that's threatening the ecological disaster in Mauritius. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. In Nigeria, after a prolonged lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak in the country, schools for final year students have opened across the country. However, today's resumption recorded low turnout of students in Kaduna State as parents refused to let their children return to school out of fear of the coronavirus.
Despite directives by authorities for exit students and teachers to resume on Monday, August the 10th, turnout was poor in many of the public and private schools visited in the Kaduna State capital. Those who did show up returned to a different environment from that which they left more than 4 months ago, when the coronavirus pandemic forced a shutdown of schools nationwide. Desks are spaced out, class numbers are smaller, while use of face masks is now compulsory.
So excited to be back, to be done with exams and see my friends. There are a lot of changes. The hand sanitizer, the washing of the hands, and the social distance, which is so good.
We are prepared because we have enough classes to accommodate the students. And we have already observed the distance in the social distancing. We make the student into 15 per class according to their subjects.
Exit classes also resumed in Bauchi State with strict observance of safety protocols. In Government Day Secondary School, the examination hall, which has the capacity for 400 students, has been converted into a classroom to accommodate 80 students only in order to achieve social distancing.
The students are not allowed to come into the school without washing their hands and without the using of face masks. The Ministry of Education supply a lot of enough face masks for the students. Each student receives his own by the gate before entering into the school. And the seating arrangement in our classes, we want to ensure social and physical distances in the classes. So it is only students are being allocated a seat.
Meanwhile, public and private schools in Zamfara State have been reopened for exit classes ahead of the senior secondary school certificate examinations. Most of the schools in the state capital are enforcing the use of face masks, hand sanitizers, and washing of hands before entry into the school premises.
All the measures which the state government and the federal governments asked us to put in place, we did that, and you can see within the school premises, the students are ready with their face masks, the hand sanitizer, and what have you. Even the school itself, we have everything in place.
There's been intense debate about the risk to children and teachers to resume for study, and if such resumption will aid a second wave of COVID-19 infections in the country. Authorities in charge of managing the pandemic have continued to allay fears of the public that there will be strict monitoring of adherence to the COVID-19 protocols to ensure the health and safety of students, teachers, and other administrative staff is not compromised.
Our officials and environmentalists say a fuel spilling from a Japanese bulk carrier that ran around on a reef in Mauritius 2 weeks ago is creating an ecological disaster and endangering corals, fishes, and other marine life around the Indian Ocean island. Experts warn a further rupture could unleash a spill that will be beyond catastrophic for the fragile coastal ecosystem upon which Mauritius and its economy relies.
On the coast of Mauritius, clear waters and pristine beaches that attract more than 1 million tourists each year are now saturated with oil. Environmentalists are calling it an ecological disaster.
Unfortunately, the oil trail is right next to an island called Îles Aigrettes, which is a natural reserve with endemic and endangered species there. There's the pink pigeon, there's giant tortoises, there's a tree there that's said to be 400 years old, and they've been trying, the Mauritius Wildlife Foundation has been trying to preserve things there and care for these endangered species, but it's going to prove to be quite a challenge to protect them now, given the spill is just next to it.
Mauritius and its 1.3 million inhabitants depend crucially on the sea for ecotourism, having fostered a reputation as a conservation success story and a world-class destination for nature lovers. The government has declared an environmental emergency. Japan is sending a 6-person disaster relief team, and France, the island's former colonial power, will send specialist teams and equipment.
It's been terrible. These people, they are fishermen, they are boat operators, they are divers, they live from the sea and they eat from the sea. So tourism will be affected for a long period of time, and they won't be able to do any of that. And the government has had to close a school because the smell is terrible. It's detrimental to the health of the people.
The MV Wakasho hit a reef off the southeast coast of the East African island nation on July the 25th, but started leaking oil on Thursday, August the 6th. At least 1,000 tons of oil is estimated to have leaked from the ship onto the waters surrounding Mauritius so far.
Well, we end the program here in Nigeria. A woman in Ilorin, Kwara State, has narrated her experience of living with blue eyes, which is unusual to many in this part of our world. She says sees clearly with her eyes, regardless of the color, but laments that her husband, who married her that way, changed when she gave birth to 2 kids with the same set of eyeballs. Ayegbami, a community in Ilorin, Kwara State capital, mostly inhabited by settlers in Kwara. This is where Riskat Aziz, an indigene of Oyo State, resides with her parents after being abandoned with 2 daughters by her husband. She was born with rare blue eyes, and the husband could not bear it when she also gave birth to 2 daughters with the same situation.
I was born like this, and it's not disturbing me because I see normally. My daughters and I, we have never been to hospital as a result of eye problems.
She and her daughters have been subjected to several snide and discriminatory remarks from neighbors and family members over the color of their eyes. According to her parents, medical doctors were contacted over the situation right from childhood, and they assured them of the perfect condition of her eyes.
I thank God today that constant jests from family members and neighbors have turned positive and happy ending. I'd always been shy to bring out my child during family gatherings due to the color of her eyes.
Is there anything wrong with the eyes of Riskat and her 2 daughters?
Problem that has to do with kind of genetic disorders actually, and which is usually hereditary. That's why you see the mother having the blue eye and the children also having it. That doesn't mean that all the children she's going to bear will all be having blue eye. There is nothing to worry about medically, not that the children will be having other, in fact, they perform normally like other children.
The community has, however, been receiving visitors from near and far who come to have a glimpse of the lady. Riskat has no source of income at the moment, but the state government and the State House of Assembly are here to address the situation.
It's also part of our responsibility to cater for their challenge, if need be. That is why I'm here to at least to showcase with their challenge and to tell them that they are not going to be left alone.
On behalf of Tony Saraki,
with several help coming for Riskat and her daughters, one wonders if she will eventually accept an apology from her husband if he comes back. And that's where we end the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.